My name is Danielle Smith, Director of Domestic Violence Prevention for the City of Indianapolis with the Indy Public Safety Foundation. So we have the Indy Champions for Domestic Violence Prevention. The program was created in January. And some of the things that we do is there's 4 pillars to the program that we really concentrate on. And the first pillar, of course, is the victim and survivor. We want to make sure that we are able to connect with those victims, get them the resources that they need, and streamline them to those resources. And how we do that is being directly connected with the domestic violence agencies in the city by meeting with the domestic violence agencies monthly, trying to see what it is that they're doing in their program, what are they adding, what are they taking away, so that way we can continue to deliver that to the community, which is the third component to this program, being in the community, boots on the ground, getting those resources door to door, meeting with businesses and organizations, and training the employees and employers that are getting the resources to know how to react once a employee is coming to them saying that they are a victim. And then the last component is with our first responders, being able to be a direct resource for those first responders and having those resources for the victims that they come in contact with. Seeing is there any information or any updated training that we can do to better serve them and protect them while they're in the community, as well as understanding what the system looks like for domestic violence, connecting with the detectives, the prosecutors, going to court with the support of those victims. Those are the 4 pillars for our program. That's huge for our city. So my motivations came from me being a victim of domestic violence. Went through it for 10 years. Currently have plates in my eye from the physical abuse. It led to emotional abuse, and then eventually it turned to gun violence. In the midst of that abuse is when I just looked up and said, when I get out of this, I want to be who I need. I need somebody. I don't know who I need. I don't even know who I should call. Who wouldn't judge me? So many things were running through my head. And at that moment, after I got out, that's when I started being who I needed. And today, we're here. I'm able to empower survivors and victims just because I am who I needed. I understand when they call where they are and able to connect with them right there and then empower them, give them the words and the encouragements that I knew I needed but didn't have when I was going through it. Majority of the times it's the exact same thing for all victims. It's just that support. It's just that encouragement. And that motivation alone, that's motivation alone of knowing that if I can just pour into you and get you a little further than where you were, then I've done a lot. So that continues to be my motivation. So specifically, we're able to help victims and survivors by first having a 24-hour hotline for them. That way they can connect with us at any hour that they need. Once we connect with them, we're able to do that intake, and we're able to know from meeting with the other domestic violence agencies what program will best fit them and give them that information. That way we prevent that re-traumatizing of victims calling several numbers before they reach the help that they need. In addition to that, we know that there are barriers that come with trying to flee domestic violence or once you have fled. So we identify those barriers by communicating and talking with that victim, and then we see if we're able to provide that need for that barrier so that way it's no longer in front of them and stops them from fleeing or staying away from that domestic violence. If we can get to it, that's the grand of having those connections to the agencies and those relationships, because then we can reach out to another agency that maybe can do what we can't do when it comes to those barriers. Some of the terms related to domestic violence can be DV. That means domestic violence, and a lot of times you hear in conversations someone was in a DV situation, you know that's related to domestic violence. And then we have IPV, which is intimate partner violence, and that's just 2 individuals who had an intimate relationship with each other, and now it's turned to violence that's classified as intimate partner violence. So a barrier buster is something that a champion or advocate is able to identify as a need that the victim may need, that the perpetrator or the abuser once was fulfilling. That need could range from childcare because the abuser is no longer in the home. That could be transportation because the car was in the abuser's name, or the car is damaged now because of the abuse that they were going through. It could be transportation. There's so many things that can keep a victim there, but they range from that transportation, the food, and therapy services. Like, what are those things that are continuing to have that victim go back or not leave is a barrier. A protection order is a legal document that protects an individual who is in fear for their life. You actually are able to do that protection order online, or you can go to our Community Justice Center. And with that protection order, though it is a piece of paper, it allows an individual to be protected. It allows an individual to break a lease when the abuser knows where they live at. And ultimately, we know that it's not a bulletproof vest. However, we know for ourselves as well as those in the community that it has helped so many people. With that protection order, we do say contact an advocate before getting one so they can walk you through it, and then once you get it, they can explain the process of if a protection order is violated, just because we know it happens. So when it's violated, we want to make sure that our community, victims and survivors, understand what are the steps to take to get that violation heard and to get it recognized, so that way you can continue to be protected. What really has struck me and motivated me to continue to do this work is some of the things that I've seen in the community was the disconnect. With doing this work for almost a decade now, I was able to see the disconnect in just community and agencies as a whole. So meeting with them and listening to them, I was able to say, okay, one of the needs for our city is bringing us back together. Like, that's the first need. How can we all work as one to battle and conquer this fight against domestic violence? And talking to other agencies, and they said the same thing. Like, we don't meet, we don't know what each other is doing. Then ultimately it trickling down and showing within our community when there's a disconnect with maybe IMPD coming on the scene, being able to go in front of IMPD and say, hey, this is what, our victims, and this is what the agencies are seeing. And they receive that. Literally just bringing it all together with that communication has been huge. With some of the things that struck me when I first started, and even before doing this work, like that, how can we? And it's working. We have resources. Please give us a call at 317-210-0866 if you are in need or know someone who is in need.